Hello, hello. Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed some you time in reflecting on all of those questions about your perception of self empowerment as it stands right now. Your next step on your journey in this self coaching method in pacing yourself where you are now is a lovely little thought experiment where you begin to listen and think about your own thoughts. So, those things that pop into your mind that you become consciously aware of. Your next mission, should you choose to accept it, and you're here with us doing self coaching, so I imagine you've accepted it, is to pay attention to what your thoughts are and to be noticing as you pay attention to what pops into your head, to be noticing any repetition that's happening or any patterns that you're seeing. So, for example, if you notice repetition in a thought like, oh my God, why would I ever think that I was good enough to do that? I'm such a failure. Like, noticing that repetition of I'm such a failure, or how could I think that I could do that? That's not possible for me. Those are all examples of those disempowering thoughts that our soul self desires to change, right? Because those are the types of thoughts that make us feel sad, frankly, deep inside, that we don't want to feel on so many levels. And so, noticing things like that, noticing that repetition, is going to be so helpful in knowing what it is that you desire to shift your perspective on. As we dive deeper into these techniques and using things like neuro-linguistic programming, the language of how your mind communicates and how we can communicate with it, we can begin to shift how your unconscious mind holds thought patterns like that, how your unconscious mind holds those repetitive patterns, and we can shift it to not hold those patterns anymore. Oftentimes, when people talk about neurolinguistic programming, they call this reprogramming. And reprogramming kind of makes it sound like you're a cyborg, right? Like you're Seven of Nine from Star Trek or something like that, and you just need like a delete, right? And you're a holistic human. We don't get to like just delete things. That's not what it means to be a part of this beautiful human experience that we are going through right now. We need to honor those thoughts or feelings as a part of our journey. And so we're not going to use language like reprogramming so much as we are going to refer to it as a shift in perspective. Because truly, by using neurolinguistic programming, we can shift how your unconscious mind is holding on to those thoughts as true or false for yourself. And so, the more that you can go out of your way to notice or identify those things that feel disempowering to your truest self, then we can focus on those as what to shift first. And so, repetition is just one way that you can be noticing your thoughts right now. Another way, for example, is to be looking for patterns. So, for example, if talking with your boss every single time makes you feel ashamed somehow, or makes you feel not good enough, or makes you just feel a feeling of smallness, of contraction. Okay, that's a pattern if that's happening every time you talk to your boss. Okay, that's a good pattern to notice so that we can shift your perspective of perhaps talking to an authority figure if we dig into it a little further, and that's like at the root of why your behavior is the way that it is, or why you think the thoughts that you think surrounding that. And that's just an example. So keep track of your thoughts to notice any patterns that are showing up for you. For example, every time someone makes eye contact with you in public, if you notice a thought of like, oh my God, don't look at me, don't pay attention, okay, we might be able to track that thought pattern back to a belief that your unconscious mind is holding for you right now of, I'm not worthy of attention, okay, or I should be hiding. And so when we can track those patterns and track that repetition, we can notice those threads that we can kind of tug on to see where we can use neurolinguistic programming and all of these juicy self coaching techniques to create that shift for you, to move into more of a place of embodying that soul self with all of those traits and thoughts and beliefs about yourself that she desires to have. Because that is who you're truly meant to be. So start noticing, pay attention to your thoughts. And I will tell you, sweet friend, that this might not come amazingly naturally to you. You might be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to remember my thoughts, or I forgot to keep track. That's okay. That's a part of the journey. That's a part of noticing, right? Like you noticed that you forgot to notice, and that's a good thing. Okay. Every time you notice something about your thoughts or any repetition or any patterns, you're giving yourself fuel for your self coaching journey so that you can make the changes that you desire, so that you can shift from anything that you notice to be disempowering into a place of empowerment instead. So start that noticing, and then begin to ask yourself, or begin to pay attention to how you react to those thoughts, to those patterns, or to that repetition. Begin to evaluate whether or not you desire these thoughts or they disempower you. That's step two. And I kind of already talked about that a little bit along the way, but I wanted to like call it out specifically in case I didn't drive it home. So that is your next step. That is the key to this part two of pacing yourself where you are. Is noticing those repetitions and patterns and noticing how you react to those thoughts, and decide whether or not those thoughts disempower you, whether or not you like those thoughts or not. And it may even be helpful for you to start journaling some of those repetitive things that you notice, or some of those patterns that you notice. Because if you can journal them and keep track of them, then your mind can't conveniently forget them when it comes time for us to focus on that shifting part. We'll talk more about your comfort zone in a moment, but part of what your unconscious mind is designed to do is to keep you in your comfort zone. So it can often like show up as self sabotage when you're trying to grow and push yourself forward. So we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up, and to know that your task right now is to notice your thoughts and to notice how those thoughts make you feel on a soul level. And we'll go from there. I love you so, so much. Stick with this noticing, and we will talk about what we're going to do with it in a little bit. I will see you in the next module, and I am sending you so freaking much love, sweet friend.